Now that we've had the opportunity to kind of go through everything in the studio over a couple of days and talk about cameras and modifiers and how to kind of work our food a little bit, we're going to take a lot of those principles and we're going to apply them in our location. So this afternoon we're at a place called Death in the Afternoon, which is a very unusual place. They put an incredible amount of effort into every single ingredient that goes into their dishes. They create really beautiful and really tasty stuff. That on top of a really unique situation in terms of the way the building is created. It's in what they call City Park, which is this fantastic sculpture and tree park right in the middle of downtown. And the restaurant is a glass box. It is all four sides, it's got glass everywhere, which is kind of unique, and it's going to create some challenges for us. So one of the things I want to focus on is mixing natural light with some of the strobe. We're going to see if we can capitalize on natural light coming into the building. But we've also got this tinted glass, which is going to give things a green cast. So we have to pay very close attention to that and probably fill it with a strobe in order to compensate for some of that green coming in. And we're going to have to balance with what's going on outside. We may also need to take a couple different exposures that we're going to blend in post-production when we're dealing with the outside versus the inside. So we've got 4 different dishes at least that we're going to shoot here in 4 different environments. Again, as I come into a restaurant, I want to analyze the place and see what it looks like in terms of how can I figure out what are going to be nice little vignettes, little scenarios, little settings that I can put together that are going to entice the viewer to want to know more about the entirety of the restaurant and the menu. So again, I'm always looking to create questions that are going to make the viewer want to know more and come up with their own answers. It builds the intrigue in every food shoot that we do. One of the things that we want to concentrate on here is the differences between making an image for your portfolio like we were doing in the studio and actually creating content that is for a client. So we've got to kind of balance what we did in the studio with what we know is going to come out from the kitchen. As I do with every restaurant, I first sit down with the restaurateur and the chef to find out what is really important to them. And in this place, it's all kind of about being handcrafted. I mean, they even put 2 hours worth of work into the mustard that they make that goes into their sandwich. They're very particular about the way they craft food. As I always do with a chef, I talk about how to build for a lens versus how to build for a diner. Now, a lot of times they will have had some experience with a photographer, but I want to give them my point of view. And again, I will go through and talk about how I come more at a low angle when I'm shooting. I want to make the food look heroic. I want to see ingredients, and as a result, I want them to do the stock pot trip. I want them to take a stock pot, turn it over, build on top of it so it's up at eye level for them or close to eye level versus down at counter height. Huge difference between building a plate here versus building a plate here. And this is where I photograph it. So that's what we're going to go for. The time that we have to work in a restaurant can vary, and it can be kind of crazy sometimes. This afternoon we've come in after their lunch crowd. We're going to be working with natural light, but it's getting to be late fall. So right now, boom, the light's going to go down pretty quickly. So we're going to have to be kind of conscious of what's going to happen in this glass box, as well as the fact that we had to kind of wait to get in here until all their clients and all their customers for the afternoon were gone. Working with restaurants, sometimes you wind up working some strange hours. Okay, so I want to get started. A couple things. First of all, when I'm on location, whatever I do, I'm redundant, meaning I've got 2 camera bodies, I've got multiple lenses, and I actually also carry 2 computers with me. I have the luxury of having a couple different laptops, and as one has kind of gotten a little bit older, I still keep it and take it with me just in case my main computer goes down, if a hard drive fails, if I drop it, if something catastrophic happens. I've got a backup and I don't have to run back to my studio or wipe out a shoot because I wasn't prepared. So I try to bring duplicates of everything I possibly could need if it's available to me. The thing I want to do next is I'm just going to grab my camera and I'm going to go handheld. I want to take a look around the restaurant and kind of get a feel for where I want to shoot first and then kind of lay an order out on how I'm going to tackle my shot list. In this particular case, I'm not consulting with a restaurateur so much. I've worked with him quite a bit. He trusts my vision and he knows what I can do. We've had a good working relationship. If I had not worked with him before, I would more than likely sit down and kind of show him some of these quick roughs. So you might want to talk about it until you've kind of built that relationship up and they have a trust in you. If you do this a lot with a particular restaurant, they're going to come back to you time and time again, and they're going to really give you kind of free rein. The longer you work with them, the more they know your style, the more you understand what they want to do, and the relationship just becomes easier. Hopefully we can capitalize on this natural light before it all goes away. But the architecture here, just the lines that I'm getting, are really nice. They're leading, they're gonna take the viewer's eye right through my composition, which is what I always want to do. So now that I've walked around and I've kind of taken some quick handheld captures and I have a good sense of what I want to do, let's get started with shot number one. Our first shot is going to be a Vietnamese beef salad, which is a pretty cool dish. It's really pretty, and it's going to be fairly high on this rectangular plate. As you can see, I've got a streak of light coming in. That light is actually bouncing off of a building to the north, and the sun is over that way in the southwest. So we've got a lot of crazy stuff going on here with this glass box that we're in. So I've really got to work to kind of overpower that and make the light feel clean and natural as it goes through the space. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring in a small octabox that I'm going to put kind of down on top and just slightly behind my first dish. That's going to be attached to the Porty. So I'm using Hensel here. The Porty is a nice little pack for me because it's battery operated, it's very lightweight. I can plug 2 heads into it, which means I can light my main dish as well as pop a little light on the background with very minimal equipment. That's where I'm going to start, is right here kind of crafting this light as I'm waiting for the chef to bring me his first dish. So this first dish is a spicy Vietnamese beef salad. This is really well cooked meat in terms of being wide and sliced nicely. It's not overcooked by any stretch of the imagination. And I've got dressed greens on here. Salads particularly like this can be kind of difficult to shoot because the greens can go really south really fast. When they have dressing on them like this, they can really kind of wilt. So more than likely, I'm going to kind of get this crafted to the point where I want. But then I'm going to ask the chef for some fresh lettuce to replace some things because it's just going to start to get really soft. And you're going to watch it as we shoot this. You can actually visibly see the lettuce in the captures going lower and lower and lower because it's wilting. So that's something I definitely want to avoid. So I've only got 2 lights here. I'm balancing the natural light outside. I've got one light that is a small octabox, and that's kind of raking up here across the stone. I need to give that a little bit more oomph, particularly in this area. It's a little bit dead. The table in the background is also looking kind of flat to me. I need to add some stuff to it, and I may do something simple as bring in some flowers and a couple of glasses on that table. And I need to get something going on here too as well. I need some silverware. I definitely need a water glass that's filled with water, maybe a little bit of wine that I can kind of bring in the foreground as well. And then I'll really start to kind of craft the food and get that a little bit more heroic. And I think I need to push in overall just to get a little bit tighter. So right now what I want to do is just kind of get some more interest going on with the space. And I first grabbed those flowers back there. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm going to play around with the chairs a little bit too in order to get a little bit of a different composition going on back here. And I'm going to throw in some glassware. So as I'm looking at this, I'm just not in love with this shot. It's not doing it for me. When I look at it, I've got way too much space down here. The distance that I have between this table and the next is just creating a ton of negative space underneath. And quite frankly, it's not benefiting me. Like that's not gonna really work for me. So I'm gonna switch lenses because I got the 50 on here and I wanna put on my 100 macro. I wanna kind of compress this whole space a little bit. I don't wanna lose the sense of architecture. But right now, I'm not loving the negative space that's going on here because my eye's getting lost rather than kind of leaning back around. It's just getting lost. So I'm going to quickly go handheld and see what I get. Night and day. Without question, I think that this is already better. I'm a little too low, but when you look at this image, it's just kind of bleh. The eye gets lost, it doesn't know where to go. Here, the eye is contained. It goes back up into this space. You see some of the architecture of the environment, but it's drawn across and back down into the food, which is exactly what I want to do. So I can play with this now and get to a place that is much, much better. Much happier with where this is going to go. So again, I'm going handheld just for a couple minutes so I can kind of find where I want to be. I'm going to find a good composition, and then I can craft it from there. So basically what I'm looking to do now is find the parts that are strongest. And then I can go back and I can kind of relight this and make it better. Like I think that is starting to look pretty good. When I look back to where we were here, I was definitely seeing a lot more of the architecture of the place. Food was getting lost. Just wasn't heroic. It's kind of down. The bottom third just didn't feel right. Immediately when I came down and came in with the 100, it looks a lot better. All right, so that's shot one. I kind of like that. So again, it may just look like I'm spacing out there as I'm looking at my camera or as I'm looking at my computer. I'm not. I'm letting my eyes defocus. I'm thinking about shape. I'm thinking about how my eye is traveling through that composition to get back to where I want it to be. I want it to start with the food. I want it to move around to give a sense of environment, and I want it to get back on that hero food. So that's what I'm doing as I'm looking at that, and then I'm making my decision where I want to go next. What is my next move? So for me, it's going to be to come in tight, right about here. And I may cut off some of the plate. Come up just a little. Okay, that's where I want to be. Overall, I'm a little bit dark, but this is going to be my starting point. So I'm going to move back here, get on my sticks, raise up just a bit, and start to craft this. The very first thing I'm going to do is brighten it up, and I'm going to do that a little bit right now with the ISO. Because I'm at 100, I've got all kinds of room to go. So let's bump it up just to 200. So again, I'm giving a couple of elements in the background that just give me a feel and sense of environment, a little sense of color. Already much, much better. I'm starting to get some nice bokeh in the background. I really like that. It's giving me kind of this sense that there's mystery back there. There's more volume. There's much larger space. I'm not seeing it all, but I want to leave it up to the imagination of the viewer. This is going to be nice. I can craft this. This is nice. So you can see what this 100 macro is doing. It's really giving us some nice bokeh, particularly in the background. I'm starting to like this. This is feeling good. I'm a little too heavy on the left side. I just don't need all that. So before I get any further, I'm going to double check my crop, make sure that I'm on my 14 by 22, and I am indeed. So let's go ahead and crop this a little bit. Make sure I've got the exact proportions I want. And I think I'm also going to increase my depth of field because I'm at 4.5, so I'm really very shallow on this dish. I need to stop down a little bit and get a little bit more depth. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my framing. Just a simple move. Ooh, this could be cool. I like this much better. The background really starting to look cool. I love these lines. They're soft. It's indicating structure back there. What's coming through the glassware is really cool. This sauce here that's in the squarish kind of bottle, awesome. Stack of plates kind of suggesting a little bit of an environment in terms of shared food, community, that kind of sense. I'm going to push that plate back a little bit, and I need to get a little something in the foreground on the left, and I will be in good shape. Let's see what happens. I am starting to really dig that. The food is going to need some finesse. I just put this, let's take one more shot. So now that I've moved everything in position, you can see the foreground here, it's just kind of the flat table. There's not a lot of interest going in on that. If I go back one shot where I had that glass just kind of coming in out of focus, it really helps. It just gives you a little bit of kind of blur, a little bit of sense of mystery. So I got to find a way to get this glass in there. What am I going to put it on? Where was it? Do we have a free tripod? All right, so now what I'm going to do, I want to get that glass in here. And it's actually above a table height, so if I bring another table in, it's not going to quite get me there. It's also going to be a problem if I bring a table in. I actually happen to have an extra tripod with me. That's kind of lucky. Normally you wouldn't do that, but Blue Goo, as we've talked about before, it's one of the photographer's best friends. I'm going to stick this guy right on there, and now I've got the ability to just adjust this wherever I want it in front of my camera. Yeah, that's perfect. It's going to give me that nice little edge. It's exactly what I want. Okay, I'm going to get a lens shade on that, and I can kind of finalize this guy in terms of the set. Then I'm going to go ahead, pull out a couple tools from my food styling kit, and we'll knock this out. All right, so now what I'm doing, I want to increase my depth of field. I've got two different Hensel lights back here. I've got their monoblock, which is not battery powered. And I've got it up here with a small Chimera Octabox. Now I just wanted to go up 2 stops on it to get more light in that background. I also want to bring this light in a little bit down more on top, and I'm going to give it another stop or so because I want to get some more power out of this in order to get greater depth of field because it's just looking a little bit too shallow. So first I'm going to bring down my Chimera just a little bit, and I'm going to increase my power. 2 stops on the background, about a stop and a half on the foreground by 1, bringing the light a little lower, 2, adding a stop to the pack, and then I can add 2 stops on my camera. I think I'm at 5.6 right now, and I want to go up 2 stops in order to increase my depth of field. See if that gets us where we want to be. Hang on. I increased my power, but then I didn't increase my depth of field. Duh. All right, I was at 4.5. That's really shallow. Let's go to 8 first. All right, let's see the difference. Okay, immediately you can see the loss in what's going on in terms of quality of the background. Let's go back and look at this where I was at 4.1. It was really bokeh out, beautiful stuff going on back here. Everything is nice and soft. We get great bokeh in a couple of different spots. When I increase that depth of field and give the food more focus, the background just dies. So I'm going to focus stack. I know that I want that background with that foreground, so we're going to do a little bit of focus stacking. So we can make a couple of adjustments here. We're going to go back to ISO 100 and we're going to open back up. Okay, now I've got to go in, I've got to fine tune this. I like what's going on with the set. the food definitely needs some work. The lettuce is starting to die. The beef is kind of hidden a little bit, and I need to get that more prevalent. So I'm gonna have to deconstruct this a little bit and kind of put it back together. So we're gonna grab a few things. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take some of these guys off because this is the top garnish. I want to get a piece of beef up front. I'm going to move this lettuce around a little bit too. So there are a couple of things that are really interesting to me back here on the side of the plate that I'm not seeing. There's radish, there's a lot of the peanuts, they're just not in the foreground. So I'm going to steal them from the back side and bring them to the front because I want to create a little bit more interest up here. There's some good stuff back here that's just kind of being lost. And you know, I'm not blaming the chef in any way because I had him build it kind of low, but he didn't know I was going to wind up coming from the side. I didn't know I was going to wind up coming from the side. So it's just changed a little bit, which means I got to change the structure of it just slightly. So again, I'm going to kind of look from my camera lens perspective and just start to build this out. I want to be mindful of any holes or cavities or caves that I'm creating. Those look terrible. So I'm going to avoid those. And if I'm starting to build a hole, I'm going to wind up plugging it with a peanut or with a radish or something so we don't have any dark spots. That's one of the things that actually is a big mistake in food photography. You'll just get this dark shape where there's kind of a cave where the food is kind of going over itself. You really want to avoid that. You can't completely, but you don't want these just nasty spots. All right, let me take a quick look. You can already see how much better that is. There's a lot more coming towards the camera now because I put this piece of spicy beef right on top. It's got nice perspective in terms of it's taking the eye across, back into some of the stuff in the background, which is looping my eye back around. That's starting to get there without question. Oh yeah, much better. You can see that radish that I added in the back left, right up here, so it's in the lower left corner. Just a hit of color, it kind of rounds out that plate, pushes the eye back in. I'm going to adjust it in a little bit. Something really simple like that, well placed, pushes the eye. It makes all the difference. All right, we're almost there with this shot. Oh yeah, definitely pretty. Okay, I'm going to add a few of these crispy noodles back in, which are their top garnish. And I think this guy is ready to finalize. Ooh, well placed. Ha, okay. I think I like this in there. Let me work that a little bit. The thing I'm starting to like about having this other plate in there, again, it's adding some interest in my foreground. And it's just helping to kind of create that sense of community. There are more people around, shared food, shared plates, that kind of a thing. All right, I definitely need to adjust my focus. This greenery in front is too far gone. The meat is nice and sharp, but I'm going to have to do a couple exposures in order to get both of those in focus. So I've got bluegill on the bottom of it. I'm just going to move it around until I'm happy with its position. and then I'm going to tack it down. And I think I like that. So I'm tacking that down so I don't break their plate. This dish has gone from something I could not stand to something that's really very pretty. I like it. So if I were to kind of go through this whole incarnation of the shot, in fact, let me do that. Let's go back to the very beginning. That was my very base, and I thought that was kind of cool. I showed architecture, I showed structure. I thought it was nice to feel the place, you know, in terms of how massive it is. It just looks awful. And obviously there's no food out there. Even when I put food out there, it just wasn't right. So this is kind of the genesis of how this shot happened. It kept getting better as I was getting in tighter. I was giving it sense of community. I was giving it a sense, I'm trying to give it a sense of place and a purpose, but eliminate a lot of the stuff that's just unnecessary. And you wind up with a heroic dish that leads you into the restaurant. More than likely, it's not the first image that's the one you're going to love and fall and be the hero. You're going to wind up kind of going through this process. Back when I used to shoot on film, and we'd be using 4x5 Polaroid or even 8x10 Polaroid, it was amazing to see what the first image looked like versus the very last one. There's always this huge transition. And it's really kind of fun, I think, to just kind of let yourself go through all your shots and see where you started and where you end up. All right, I'm going to do a quick focus stack, and I'm going to do that by hand. I happen to know very well the parameters of a lens and what I'm looking at, so I can do this manually. Most of the time I would tape it and do my markings. Here I'm not going to, because we're kind of in a point where we need to move on to the next shot. We've got a limited amount of time in the restaurant. So I'm just using my eye to go ahead and make those adjustments. All right, I'm really happy with this. This shot has come together nicely. It's made a good transition from where it started, where it just wasn't fabulous, and it got to a place where I'm really happy with it. I feel comfortable. Let's move on to the ramen shot.